Hello and welcome everybody to episode 3 of the Rugby League Roundtable. Today our focus is on junior pathways and grassroots football. We're going to touch on the bush football aspect of things as well. I know that has came up in the previous 2 episodes. I'm your host, James Graham. I'm joined by the coach, Anthony Seibold, the executive Penrith Panthers CEO, Matt Cameron, and the leading NRL journalist, Buzz Rothfield. Gents,
hello, mate.
Just firstly, to kick things off, thank you so much for wearing the same clothes in episode 1 as 2. It's really important that we keep the same attire on. So well done on coming in on a fresh day, making sure you got your same shirt ironed. Matt Cameron just sporting the suit. Mate, I know you brought your active wear with you, but we insisted you get back into...
Well, you said executive, so I thought I should dress like an executive. So.
Thank you so much for wearing the same clothes, and same for all other episodes, by the way, gents. Bush football, Buzz, you've spoken about it, you're passionate about this, you talked about the representation in state of origin that the Bush has provided. I want to ask you, though, is the fact that it's under-resourced the reason why it overproduces? Like, is there something that is in the mentality, the culture of we're under-resourced, we need to fight for everything that we've got, that maybe produces a disproportionate amount of players compared to those that are given the red carpet treatment?
Yeah, I don't know. I just think we've got to continue to keep an eye on it and invest in it. And, I get stories and emails and texts from, country rugby league clubs folding. With Jamie Lyon came from Weewar. They had to forfeit a lot of games this year, or the mercy rule came into play because they just couldn't field football sides, and there's no money in the town. They're, all doing it tough. And I've been out to Moree a lot, and, I've covered Boomerang's games. I've been to Boggabilla, those Indigenous areas. And you go up there, you watch, but the Ewan McGrady era, where he came from. But they're all struggling to stay afloat. And I think it's as important to keep a lifeblood to bush footy as it is to the Pacific nations. I really do. Again, it's up to NRL clubs to get off their backsides and probably do what Matt's club does better than ever. Where'd you go, Dubbo Mudgee this year? And I think every NRL club should not only have an area of the bush, Manly might have Tamworth or whatever, but not necessarily take a footy game, but make a commitment to the NRL that one bye round every year that you go and do a camp in that town and community, and then the Wagga region belongs to the Canberra Raiders. In bye round, they go there for a week. They do schools, they do skills, they do community, and let's take some more footy there.
Yeah. I agree, Buzz. I took 3 staff members up to I'm from Rockhampton originally. I took 3 staff members up to Rockhampton and Yeppoon the weekend after our last game, and we went to St Brendan's College, which is a boarding school up there that Ben Hunt and Harry Grant and Corey Oates and Matt Scott and Julian O'Neill, those types of guys came out of. We went to the local schoolboys grand final. There was about 2,000 people at the TCC versus St Brendan's game. TCC is where guys like Kobe Hetherington and Ethan Bullymore come out of, and Emmaus were playing in the lower grades. Cameron Munster came out of that. So every award that was given was the Cameron Munster award, or the Rod Reddy award, or the Tim Glasby award, and so that was really good to see. But you could tell that the region was craving. People from the NRL coming in. We had a great response at the schools, the 2 schools we visited, and on grand final day. And the other thing we're able to do, to your point around bush footy, my brother coaches the local A-grade side there called Rockhampton Brothers, and we went down to the raffles on the Friday night. That's how they keep afloat. And there was 4 guys from the club, and they have a bit of a rotation, and they go down on a Friday afternoon after work, and they sell raffle tickets, and that goes to keeping the club afloat. They don't pay the players any money at all. Biggest challenge they've got up there, Buzz. Schoolboy footy was thriving up there and flourishing. But the local footy struggling because of the FIFO element. In Central Queensland, the mining is like 2, 3, 4 hours. And so you get some players one week and you don't get them the next. And that's because I was talking about what are the biggest struggles to my brother. And that's what he said, like you you have guys who drive in and out to the mines, other guys fly in and out from other areas, and so consistency of your footy club is probably not there like it used to be when I was a young fella growing up in the bush.
I think it's somewhere the NRL can be a bit more active. I'd love to see them go to New South Wales government tourism. How much money would have your game in Mudgee have generated for local business? A couple of mil, they told me.
Mudgee, Bathurst. I probably know the Bathurst numbers better, but yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, let's go to New South Wales tourism and say we've got 10 Sydney clubs. We want to send them bush. How about you? They're going to, do stuff for the economy there. Why can't you give us 1.5 minutes every time they take a game there? We can entrust like 200K, get the local councils to contribute, but do a deal with the government and make this an annual project.
We'll each...
You cannot, there cannot ever be a threat. Laurie Daly came from Junee, and they're struggling to survive, Wagga Wagga, when I was a young reporter, I went down there, Penrith played, Mike Stevenson was at hooker, and he played against Ray Brown that night. He was with the Riverina. And it stopped that town, that game, an old Amco Cup game midweek. But Wagga now, the AFL have just come in there, and it's 50-50.
But it's a smart play. I think I read a book called, I don't know if it was The Sports Gene, and they spoke about how the geographical location of towns, like where you're born, plays a big part in your sporting prospects. And Wagga Wagga, as I call it, is disproportionate, provides sports athletes because of geographical location. It's just big. It's just slightly big enough. It's equidistant between Sydney and Melbourne. It's got 2 sporting codes, which drives competition. There's an attitude almost of we don't get the same as the city kids, which drives ambition to prove people right. But there is something about that particular town, that size of town, in the geographical location, which affects proportion of athletes that make it in the major sporting codes. And that's why there is a bit of we should put more money in there, because it seems to want to produce. And I get that argument, but maybe if it's...
And it's not for players, it's for promotion.
For the community,
awareness.
So then...
to walk into schools with the Oz kick, bags of goodies and
I mean, but Buzz, okay, like, please, I'm playing devil's advocate here. You've spoken about the number of players that represent this state that come from the bush. I could throw the argument of, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Because it seems to be producing. Like, and people can talk about and make it better.
Wagga was producing 20 years ago too, Jimmy, and then the AFL moved into that area.
Okay.
I went, and I know you've got some Temora, but who's come from Temora? Mardo and the Parramatta, Zach Lomax come from.
Oh, yeah.
See, and when I went to Temora 10 years ago, they were telling me that they were in trouble. They were in trouble. And chook raffles weren't enough, and volunteers and club barbecues weren't enough.
And you get you so far,
Yeah.
But when you're in trouble, you fight.
Yeah,
it brings out the best in people.
There are some fighters.
Like, it brings out, exactly. This is what I'm saying. And I'm not necessarily agreeing. I'm just pointing the argument to when people are on the back foot and they're in trouble and they feel like they're not getting anything. Like, you are driven beyond belief to represent your town for everything, all the shit that no one supports us. You come out and you fight like hell for your community because we've been given nothing. And I think sometimes, like, it's obviously producing.
But as well as, just one sec, bush footy's going down. And even though we've got these origin players, do you guys remember City Country?
Yeah. Yeah.
You remember City Country?
How old do you think I am?
Yes,
Man,
colour. But what I'm saying is, Jimmy, Country used to have a side that had come to town from and beat City.
Exactly, yeah.
Even the Newcastle competition, one year they provided 3 New South Wales players, Panowitz, Burt from Maitland and Coots from West there. It's nowhere near as... And if we could ever build to that level, again, it needs investment.
Your point about regional centres, might have been the same book. It talks about a lot of those country kids that don't sport specialise.
Yeah,
still at
it's
a
the
later
biggest
age.
thing, yeah.
Early specialisation, it's general.
They play multiple sports.
Yes,
So you look at-
that actually helps.
Yeah,
It helps.
Yeah,
The
it does,
AFL
yeah.
did a big research paper in 2009 in and around what's the sort of profile of a player who plays 100 games in the AFL and where were they drafted? And they went through their backgrounds, and the biggest thing they found in the research paper was regional areas, multi-sport athletes. They were the 2 biggest indicators of playing 100 games now. Now, that's dated. That's about 14, 15 years old, that study. But I would suggest that one of the reasons why people come out of Rocky or Wagga Wagga or Mackay or whatever,
They play multiple
sports because that's all you do as a kid. And you don't have the transportation or the distance between one sport to the next, or getting across Sydney or whatever. But that was the biggest thing they found.
Yeah.
It was really, really interesting.
Roger Federer versus Tiger Woods debate. Early specialisation. Tiger Woods basically given a golf club from birth. Roger Federer didn't start playing tennis till he was 15.
Yep.
He played a multitude. He didn't specialise rather in tennis till he was 15. There's something to be said for that. But everyone knows about Tiger Woods. Oh, that's the story that sells, right? Oh, you've got to give them the footy from birth. Doesn't necessarily work that way.
The other piece to Seib's conversation there is that we looked at not only multi-sport but multi-age. So a lot of those sports in those regional centres you can play 10s, 12s, 14s, 16. So you've got a 13-year-old playing against bigger kids. Yeah. Or you've got an adult who plays in a Saturday cricket team with his 15-year-old son playing first-grade cricket. And we find, obviously, we've got a lot of programs that we run out of Bathurst and that regional corridor, and we find that a lot of those country kids come down, they have a different type of resilience. Like we talk about farm strength.
Yeah.
So they haven't necessarily been in a gym, but they've been throwing hay bales and pigging and doing those sort of things that kids in the city don't.
Well,
Jimmy, just one thing talking about the bush, and I was talking about it earlier. Teams go to Perth now with rugby league games because WA government back it. Teams go to Darwin because WA, South used to play up in Cairns because, there was community. That's where I'm talking about the NRL need to be more active to get government support in, so there's a pool of money for clubs to drive tourism into these twice a year, one game, or...
Well, then, is it on the governing body for the 12 home games that each team receives? One of those has to be played in a regional area. And then if you want to sell your home game to a government, i.e. Perth, to take a game there, then that's on you. But I surely the clubs wouldn't have a problem with one game mandated for the good of the game.
But they'd need to get something back. Like we take game to New Zealand.
But a lot of those regional centres, like we take a game to Bathurst, we take a game to Mudgee. Now those regional centres aren't flush with cash. So when you enter a negotiation, not necessarily with the state government, but with the town, for a town to stump up X amount of dollars to host a game,
But then
they're paying us to come, and they're accepting all the risk because.
But should the obligation go to the sports governing body to say we're going to fund this?
Yeah. But I even got backlash in a couple of emails from people in Mudgee blowing up about the council spending money to drag Penrith into town when there were potholes everywhere, and the local hospitals crap and.
Well, you're never going to please everyone.
No,
like you're never going to please everyone. And look, you could argue, well, why we spoke about expansion before, 600 million. Like I'm sure there's plenty of people that could figure out better ways to spend that than protection in South Sea against China. But it's just the economy. It just is what it is. But I think maybe then if these areas are underfunded and could do with that need that leg up, and part of that leg up being a presence and investment, the present side of thing in terms of junior pathways, is that more important than dollars? Do you think, Matt?
So through our experience in that Western Corridor, we started taking a game. We took a game out there in 2012, I think it was, off the back of the success. And Panthers have got a Leaf Club in the main street. And I tell this story all the time. Jimmy Jones, the recruitment manager of Panthers, and I went out. We ran a clinic for the best 13s, 14s, 15s, 16s in the Group 10 area, so 40 kids in each age group. And at the end of the day, we sat them down and we took some photos with the big scoreboard, Carrington Panthers in the background. And Jimmy stood up in front of the group and said, "Who's a Panthers fan?" And 2 kids put their hand up, and the second kid saw that it was only him, and he put his hand down. And we got a club in the main street. Not one kid was in a Panthers jersey, shorts, hat, socks, nothing. And we made I went back to the board and I told them the story, and we made a conscious effort to invest in that area. We've got a 10-year arrangement. I think we're in year 7, maybe year 8, with a 10-year arrangement with Bathurst Council to take a game up there. Our recruitment strategy is now built on Western Corridor, Group 10, Group 11, Group 14. The Matt Burtons, the Charlie Staines, the Dane Lorries, the Mardos, we've got a, as you alluded to, a sizable junior league, and we recruit out of that and out of that Western Corridor. We don't go to New Zealand. We don't recruit out of North Queensland. We look after that patch of ground.
You used to, Fisher Harris.
Well, that was previous administration. But we, and I genuinely feel, there's a bit of a pie in the sky model, but, if the game was to able to secure $10 million and carve it up into buckets of 500,000 and go, Manly, there's your 500,000, Penrith, there's your 500,000. To get your funding, dot 1, you need to go and employ a game development manager. Bang. Point 2, you need to be able to deliver these 10 things. Sorry, you need to adopt a region and you need to go and deliver those 10 things in that region. We'll give you the next 100,000. Point 3, you go and do these things, we'll give you the next 100,000. Now, if Seibold club wanted to work their backside off and achieve everything on that, he gets his full $500,000 funding. If Club X down the road doesn't want to do it and they only want to do the top 3, they only get their $300,000.
So incentivize it.
Incentivize development.
Yeah.
So
It's a very good point that you make. Yeah. But
And I guess it becomes another avenue for recruitment too.
Well, yeah, there's more than just a
look at
financial
the benefit that it's served us.
Yeah.
And the clubs are the best developers of the game. Like the work that the game development officers that work for the NRL do is exceptional in those regional areas and in the CBD areas. But the clubs are in my opinion, the clubs are the best at developing. So fund the clubs to go and do the work. Incentivise the clubs to go and do it.
When you talk about development, are you talking about like X's and O's? Because I'm so far removed from I can barely remember the pathway system back in England was so probably almost non-existent. We just played a lot of football, and I'm sure they did have ideas and structure to it. But you talked there about removing the game development officer from the NRL. But if a club takes over, what sort of systems would you implement there?
So one of the first things that we did in that Western Corridor is we provided assistance to the Western Rams, which is that regional team that plays in the Johns and Daly Cup out there. The second thing we did is we undertook a huge piece of work in coach education. It's not about the players, it's about the coaches. Yeah. Undertake the coach education.
Development.
Yeah, it's those sorts of things. And when we went to Mudgee, we took the players out early. We had a camp out there. Our foundation would have engaged with 1,000+ kids out there over that 3-day period in schools, disability clinics. That's there's another piece of funding. Actually encourage clubs to get out there. And the clubs that, again, selfishly from my point of view, we did it with club funding, our own funding, but the benefits that we have received by doing it.
Yeah.
As I said, it's the Matt Burtons, it's that cavalcade of kids that have come, the Yos, all those guys that have come over the hill. It's underpinned the success that we're having at the moment.
Do you think those players are the players they are without you being there?
No, I don't think. Well, there's always going to be avenues for the best players. They're always going to get seen at a school carnival. They're always going to get. But for a kid like Yowie who could drive down on a Friday, play Saturday, and go home and finish his schooling at St John's, that's rather than potentially being scouted by the North Queensland Cowboys, he's got to move away from home.
Yeah.
We would like to keep those kids regional and close if we can, rather than bringing them down too early.
Yeah. Wow. Is there anything that the city could learn from the bush. And you mentioned it before, Matt, around how in the country you play up and down age groups. I think it's referred to as the relative age effect, where often, you know, the kids who are born in January, February, March would relatively, you know, in terms of the people that they're playing against. But I know there are certain sports that you just go up, and once you turn a certain date, once that turns a certain date, so it's, you're always the youngest, the middle, and then the oldest at each age group of it cycles. So you get an experience of being the youngest player, the middle player, the oldest player, relatively age. Is that something that the NRL could look to do to help improve the pathway system? Seibs, I know you're quite into your athlete development, player development. Is this something that could be worked upon in the NRL structures?
Yeah, I think so, because one of the reasons why you lose a lot of players 14, 15, 16 is because sometimes kids go through maturity and puberty like earlier than some other kids. So often that will mean a player disappears out of our game, and sometimes they don't come back.
Or someone looks really good and they get all the resources because they're dominating at 13.
That's right.
And it's not potential identification, it's who's performing the best at the moment.
It's interesting, and everyone's different, but I remember Paul Bunn, who's at Melbourne Storm, he was an old school teacher of mine when I was a kid, but I remember him saying, he's worked at a number of clubs, he said, don't sign the hairy 14-year-old kid.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because essentially they've got physical advantage. And if you look at our game, it's not an early specialisation game. Contact sports, collision sports are a late specialisation sport. And so whereas, you know, things like gymnastics and swimming, they're early specialisation, right? So, look, there's certainly merit to it. Cricket, Queensland Cricket used to do it back in the 80s and the 90s with regards to it wasn't January to December. It was October to September 30th. And they had their reasons in and around, you know, doing that for player development. So there's a lot to be said for it. But I think the big thing is, like, one of the things, I'm not sure whether the book you guys were talking about before was the Talent Code, but the Talent Code talks about a couple of things.
That's
right?
the one I'm with.
And so Talent Code talks around, you know, the first one is ignition. So what's your ignition to you know, play at the highest level? It might be that someone from Rockhampton saw Cameron Munster on the TV. If he can get out of Rocky and play for Queensland or in the NRL, why can't I? Right, then it's repetition, and then it's master coaching. They're the three things that, when they've studied these talent pools across the world, really, like you look at the sprinters in Jamaica, you look at the long distance runners in Kenya, you look at the you know, the soccer players out of Brazil, you look at the women tennis players out of Russia. They're all talent pools that have been identified, but there's been an ignition. And so Penrith going into, you know, that Western corridor, that would give those kids an ignition going, right, if Zayo
if he can do
this, why can't I? And so I think that's the benefit of having NRL clubs involved with bush or regional areas.
Tamworth, Manly, Tom Trbojevic in town, you know, wow.
Yeah.
Yowie still talks about going to a city country game. And someone gave
him... Do you remember that?
I do remember that, yes.
Well, it finished a long time ago, mate. I was trying to give you a rap.
And I can't remember the player, but they gave him his socks.
Yeah.
And he thought it was like like better than any Christmas present he'd ever had, a pair of sweaty socks.
Mate, Martin Afai came to town when I was a kid. Great Britain played Central Queensland. And I remember sitting in the grandstand with my dad. He scored 4 tries. They beat the local team pretty convincingly, but I just go, look, this guy's a superstar. I saw him on TV playing the first test, and like he's in the hometown. So I think that would be a story that a lot of kids would say. So I get it, Buzz, and I think it's a great idea around, even if it's not a game, like actually choosing one of your 3 buys to send a cohort of people
go into camp up there
into town or something like that. You know, it'd be a great idea, and I think, I think it'd get real traction. Yeah,
and you own that area. You know, you're responsible for that area, and you know, having a presence in that town and you'll get benefits out of it, like Penrith have.
Yeah. No,
you know, like that. I often wonder, where would Martin be? Where would Yo be? Where would Burton be if they hadn't have, you know, Penrith hadn't have been active?
Yeah.
You know, where would they be?
I guess a big argument as well is how many others do we miss? How many are we missing or
Yep.
fall through the...
And that goes back to your comment about sports specialisation. Like we fall in love with the big kid, and then all of a sudden, like you look at Matt Burton, you're like he could kick for an AFL club. He could probably go to America and kick for the NFL. Like he's that kid that grew up in Dubbo and did everything.
He can play union.
That skill set clearly has translated across to what he can do with an NRL ball.
Matt, you're probably in the best position to affect the pathway system. Is it something that Penrith are looking at? You know, a huge development club, even things like, you know, we look for wingspan in certain sports, height, like I said, the relative age effect. Is this something that you're identifying in for, and not just looking at talent, you're looking at potential?
Yes, not necessarily. Like we're not, doing a whole gamut of tests on 13, 14-year-old kids. We don't operate like that. But there's some pretty robust, I suppose, programs that we put them through. And they're not necessarily physical or football related. Like we run a program out there called the Mental Game. And the concept behind it is we're just trying to find good men and good women. Then we'll worry about whether they can play first grade or not. And it's a rite of passage program. So there's a version of it that exists at this age group and a beefed up version at this age group and this age group and this age group. And then they fall into the NRL program where they go down a different path, I suppose. So we actually put a hell of a lot of importance in resilience, connection, those sorts of things. We are conscious of, he's a big kid and he's a late developer. But yeah, it's actually this mental game program that we think we're getting more benefits in at the moment. So.
We all grew up at a time when winning was celebrated from a very young age, playing for trophies from a very young age, playing in, I can remember my under-8s team, St. Helens Crusaders, jersey in the back there. We went undefeated, under-8s, won what could be called the grand final. Under-9s, undefeated, lost the grand final, devastated, learned how to lose. First loss in 2 years, it still hurts. Seems like a bit of a different approach is being applied in junior football. Some arguing around not keeping score, with maybe a design to keep more people in for longer. Seibs, what are your thoughts on this? You deal with the players and maybe have got a glimpse of that player that's not experienced the heartbreak of a grand final loss or the thrill of a grand final win, even at the ages of 8 and 9. What's your opinion as a head coach on this issue?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I think one of the reasons why I've encouraged my kids to play team sports is because you have to be part of a team and you have to try and put the team first and you have to handle wins or you have to handle losses. Now, a lot of sports now, 13 and below, don't keep score or there's no winners. Again, I'm not sure how much resilience that builds because essentially team sports can be a metaphor for life in a lot of respects. You got to persevere. You've got to keep going. You've got to put the team first. You might not like what position you're playing, but you know what? You've got to do that. So, I think, I don't necessarily like the idea of not having a winner or a loser in junior sports, and that's probably a little bit of a archaic type mentality in many respects. But I think team sports is all about learning, is all about teaching lessons for life and being part of a common cause, right? So whether you win or you lose. One of the things we do see with kids who come to our club from, super teams and a lot of, from what I understand in Sydney, there'll be these super teams that get developed at under 14, under 15 level, and they win their competition undefeated.
Yeah.
And they might go under 16s undefeated. And then you might get a sprinkling of players go to 3 or 4 different clubs. And they're not used to losing, or they're not used to putting the team first with regards to the position they play. And they're the challengers. They're the ones that, from a coachability point of view, some of those guys don't have.
Never been on the back foot.
Well, never been on the back foot.
Never had to really. If you're in a super team at 13, 14, you're not learning how to play the game.
Well, you're
not.
Because that's
not what the game is.
No.
Unless you're Penrith.
Yeah, but that's sort of
Yeah.
my experiences with it, mate. You know, like I believe that, you know, being part of a team's part of that common cause, and you learn from your wins, your losses, and so on. And I don't think it helps the kids.
Is that why these rules get brought in to stop the creation of super teams? Because we know it happens. Like it's hard not, and I guess kids know if they win or lose, they keep score. They're not dumb. Like my
Parents do. Parents still keep the score. So.
Yeah.
I find junior league, from my experience, a little bit too competitive, to a detriment of the game. I'll give you an example, man. My young fella was probably under 12s and playing De La Salle and against Gaimea Gorillas, and they were the two strong clubs, and so they started at that age poaching Engadine players and Joey's play. And you know what? And you know, by the time they got to 16s, those clubs had folded. There were about 3 or 4 strong clubs, and they had to join Wollongong and then St George Juniors to have a competition because they were trophy hunting from 12-year-old. And then those clubs were so stockpiled with so many players, they'd have an A team and then they'd have 2, they call them silver and bronze now. So even at bronze level, at silver level, they weren't bad enough to play bronze. So this club had 2 silver teams. Instead of picking 2 front rowers and 2 front rowers and halfback there and halfback, some fast kids to play, they stacked the number 1 silver side. They went through and won every game. And the poor kids in the second silver side didn't win a game. Is that the right way to... that sort of competitiveness?
No, I don't like that.
But that's what I'm saying. That happens out there.
And
that guy once wrote a really good column when he left. I think it was in the Herald. He left Melbourne Storm and he moved up to Queensland. He started getting into junior. And he said they all want to be Craig Bellamy. They were structuring kids.
Yeah.
They were and mate, so I don't know if you stop them playing for trophies and medals and bests and fairest. I'm happy when they get a little McDonald's certificate afterwards.
Yeah. It's such an interesting dilemma because on your one hand, like Seib said, you've got that building resilience, learning how to win, learning how to lose. But then your other hand, you've got the creation of and people taking it serious. I'm down on some of the ovals. I see them recording it. Yeah. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? This is like under 10s Oz tag and the drone's up. I'm like...
There was a terrific hooker, the 12s, and he ended up playing New South Wales under 9. You could see he was special. So he wanted to go to D-Lo. He was sick of England. So his parents put his grandma's address in at Caringbah so he could join. This stuff happens. Yeah.
So the stuff Steve was talking about and you were talking about, like the NRL did a piece of work probably just before COVID, and the resulting output was the player development framework, which is we're going to not keep scores at certain ages, and we're going to change this rule. There was an 18-month registration window, so if you're a little kid in the below age group, you could go again in the upper age group because of your size and those sorts of things. But it is a fine line finding the balance between the propagating the game and registration numbers like this. The player development framework exists at the moment within our junior leagues, and junior league numbers are accelerating. So it's clearly participation numbers tell us that it's doing good. I quite often have it explained to me like, so you're going to go and take a bunch of 12-year-old kids to play cricket and you're going to play with a tennis ball. No, they want to play with a real ball. They want the real rules. They want all that. But the trade-off to that is when you go and run a trial with a group of kids and a parent of a 13-year-old boy comes up and says, oh, he's a left centre.
Oh.
Yeah.
Who says? Because he's played the last 4 years in a stacked team where he's played left centre. And it's, okay, so if he comes and plays at the Penrith Panther and Ivan Cleary says, mate, you're going to make your debut this week, but we need you to play right centre. What's he going to say? Oh, no, I only play left centre. Yeah, so it's finding the balance between...
Siebes, you made the point around our game isn't an early specialisation sport. So for me, it's clear that it's silly to have these super teams. You do nothing but inflate the ego of the under 12s coach, and like if they want to give themselves a pat on the back for if that's the biggest thing to them. I mean, maybe they need to to reevaluate what's important to them. I get that sport is important to so many, and because it is so it's so life changing. You know, that the kid that maybe he thinks he's a left centre ends up playing on the right wing, creates a life. He affects his family. He changes the course of his family's history forever, and there's a lot of pressure on that. So you can understand why at a young age, when a parent identifies they're onto something here, they invest their time, which is their greatest resource, and they're fully all in. But what can be done about that? Because I don't know if there's a perfect solution. Where is that balance, that fine line between competing or actual talent development, which means not winning every week?
Yeah. So statistically, at that age, 12, 13, 14, that age where players are leaving the game, more often than not, it's a bad experience in the game.
That's what is making players exit to participate.
One. And the second one is more often than not a bad experience with the coach. So again, like, the game is the game. The game flourishes. I feel like if we're going to do any work, it's in that coach education space. It's explaining to the people that we're putting responsible with these young boys and girls, no, he's not just a left centre. Let him play. It's not about you winning. It's about them enjoying themselves and becoming better and all those sorts of things. So I think there's a real opportunity. And again, I know the NRL doing a piece of work at the moment where they're restructuring how the coaching accreditation works from the bottom all the way up. So,
and what percentage of these kids just go out there to play with their mates and have fun? It's like you can play golf or tennis or soccer, and they're not being developed as NRL players. They're just keeping fit. And
at times, I think clubs can take the fun out of it for players.
Well, I've seen it.
Yeah, because there's a lifetime to be serious when it comes to sport. The overwhelming majority of players won't, quote unquote, make it. Surely fun should be at the forefront, right?
Yeah, definitely. That keeps a kid coming back, doesn't it? You know what I mean?
But you got to grade these players. Because do
you need to grade them?
I think you do. I think you need an A competition because even from 12 onwards, you've got
junior league struggle. Like when we talk about not keeping scores and those sorts of things, there is a behind the scene issue when that junior league manager then goes to restructure a competition for the following year, and if we're not keeping, we don't know the relative basis between that team and that team, and we put them in that grade and them in that grade. Sometimes it can.
Do you agree? You got to grade players, though?
Teams, not necessarily players.
Right.
So
grade teams, like not players.
In our junior league, we have a little bit of difficulty just ensuring there's like levels of parity within certain age groups of competitions. Again, you don't want to put it together and because you haven't kept data from the previous year, you get it incorrect the following year, and all of a sudden it's lopsided. And then you've got to make big changes, and we try to avoid that.
I know not necessarily playing the same rules and regulations are great for talent development. I know there's a certain area of Paris where basically it's street football and they produce like ridiculous numbers of professional soccer players, and they put that down to not playing 11 aside. Is there a way to restructure how the game is played? I know we've got Oz tag, we've got league tag, we've got touch, but even 13 on 13, is that the best way on the same adult field? Is that the best way to produce the same amount to maximise the potential that these athletes have?
We've run selection trials picking like junior squads in previous years where we play 11 on 11, so there's more space and just so you can see what kids can do as opposed to it all being tight and confined.
But you're talking about looking for opportunities to develop rugby league players, are you, for NRL, or we?
Just to
my point is to have involvement in the sport, and kids go out there and enjoy themselves, and they don't have to be A-grade footballers, but it's the family engagement, and then they go home and they turn the television on, and the more kids participants we have, the better it is overall for their interest of the game.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, Buzz, is the overall interest of the game doesn't mean NRL field, NRL rules at junior. I think we can do better at keeping people engaged and playing for longer, and development of potential future NRL players. I think both of those issues. I think this is quite a new phenomenon, a new area of development where it used to just be like, and maybe not by design, but that produced better players that they got to play in the backyard. Where now, like you're saying, it's become, everyone wants to be the next Coach Bellamy.
I think that our numbers are good. Dave Trodden sent me these club figures, and they're growing. We're going the right way. But,
We talk sometimes about, like if you went into your house now, what's on the floor? Tiles? Wood panelling?
Yeah.
What was on the floor at home when you were a kid?
Carpet.
And what did you do? You wrestled your head off every day.
Yeah.
So even our houses, our houses and our backyards are different to when you grew up in the bush.
Yeah, 100%.
Kids don't wrestle on the floor with their little brother or their dad because the floor's too hard, because we all grew up with carpet and now it's tiles and floorboards.
It's interesting that how the layout of a house could potentially affect someone's.
Even the size of you're a 450 square metre block with a tiny little backyard.
Well, that's one of the arguments now around the duplex being not conducive for backyard footy.
Yeah.
No cricket pitch.
Yeah.
No footy field.
Yeah.
Interesting. What about the introduction of tackling? Seibs, you as the coach, you maybe spend a lot of time actually teaching some of the new players the correct tackle techniques. I know even you look at Jake Toborovic, what like the pin-up boy for tackle technique, doesn't always get it right. No. Is this an issue we can address from a younger age, or is it something that only needs to be developed at a later age? And if so, how do we introduce it?
No, I think there's a couple of things there. Look, I think for safety reasons, you do need to teach tackle technique. Now, without knowing exactly, I know that there's been some experimentation with regards to ages and,
there's a tackle safe program in Junior League now.
Look, so I really encourage that, because you want to build up, if you want to keep them as participants, you need to build up their confidence. But it goes from building up their confidence to safety about the right tackle technique. Now, when I was working with England Rugby, my last little period there with them, England Rugby Union, they dropped the tackle height to below the belly button, all right? Then they ended up going up to the chest. But they initially did that because they thought it was going to be safer, less, concussion and so on. They actually found that was worse. Because
the tackler was being concussed.
And they didn't have great tackle technique. So then they raised it up here, and they were trying to save concussions for the attacking player.
Yeah, the ball.
The ball carrier. But actually, in fact, they created a situation where players were more at risk. Right. So I think there's a graded. It's almost like when you get injured, there's a graded return to contact that the NRL players will go through. There almost needs to be, in my opinion, a graded way to teach players tackle technique and what's the right age. I'm not sure on that, but there needs to be a sort of a graded introduction to tackling, tackle safety.
Almost like a license. So
in some respects,
you prove to an observer that you're adequate and able to put to an effect a safe tackle.
That's in place at the moment.
So it's actually given a license? Like,
I'm not sure if it's a license, but
coaches need a certificate, don't they, to be able to coach?
Correct.
Yeah.
But each player at junior league level has to go through a tackle safe program.
Oh, right.
At that 6s and 7s age group.
Which is again, that's what I wasn't quite clear on. I knew there was something in and around that space, but
a lot of those programs are now not necessarily delivered by the team coach who might be new to it. They're actually delivered by a junior league club official who's got enough experience in the game to cycle them through and make sure they're learning it the right way.
Just finally, parents at games. I listened to, I think it was Malcolm Gladwell, we'll finish up on this point, who suggested parents shouldn't be there, and even how with different generations, like, when I was playing, I had to travel to the games, to training, so my dad had to stay, but he'd be like quite often the only parent watching, and how that's changed now where everyone goes and watches and observes, and I've been at a few junior league games, and the parent involvement and and behaviour on a sideline is.
We've got a sports psych that does a little bit of work with us, and he often talks about the ride home. So the young boy, young girl plays the game, everything's finished, gets in, but it's the ride home. Is it dad? What do you think? What do you do? Like it's that, or is it nothing? And then the kid in the back seat, oh, have I done something wrong? Like it's the ride home. It's getting the balance of positivity, I suppose.
Yeah, look, there's good parents, there's bad parents, you know. Some misbehave on the sideline, but look, it's a really important part of life. And raising kids to be there and encourage them. Yes, it is.
Is it? But one sports scientist I was listening to said parent, and I think they maybe even did some trials in South African Rugby Union where parents were just not allowed to attend. It was just, trust us with your kids. We'll develop them. We don't need you to observe.
I'm talking about putting in the park, not in the elite program, or you know, you don't need to be at elite programs, but when they're, you know, from 6 to 15, it's a great Saturday morning for most parents. And with parents there, they then buy their sausage sandwiches and bacon, you know, and they support the club. They do. You can't.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to let go of, and it's counterintuitive.
But they volunteer too, Jim.
Yeah, I know. I know they do, and you know, you can't thank them enough. And it can be deemed as counterintuitive not to be there, quote unquote, supporting your child. But there is some evidence out there to suggest that it may be better for them to be alone and not be under parental supervision as well as a coach supervision. We'll wrap this episode up. It's been great talking grassroots. I
Question before you go.
Go on.
Define grassroots.
Define grassroots. Ooh, great. I would say grassroots to me means the junior participation in a particular sport that ends at the age of 18.
Because if you ask 10 different people, because I played this game, if you went and asked 10 different people in our game, everyone has a
I would say grassroots excludes.
It's a term that we throw around all the time.
Yeah,
because I would have included bush footy as grassroots.
Well, I guess some people would. I would say more juniors than the bush, although we brought that up. I would say it's pure juniors. Yeah, that's my definition. Wrap us up, Buzz. What's your final thoughts or biggest area of, I guess, concern
well,
or
it's
for
interesting
improvement?
what we talk about, the definition of grassroots. Is it from mats up? Is it from sixes up? Is there an NRL club, you know, is Dino Mezzatesta responsible for, you know, D-Lar pinching 10-year-olds from, you know? So what is grassroots?
Yeah.
It's
and whose responsibility is it? That's...
Yeah. Look, and I think we should remember, as much as, you know, kids like their trophies, you've got to be careful with the competitive side of sport at, you know, at that age. And really, that they should be there more than anything else to be having a good time and fun with their mates. That's my view, and I'm really strong about that. And when they get to 14 and they start going into that's when they can get there more specialised and serious about it. And I'm really, you know, that's what I feel.
Matt?
I think the game is flourishing. All the data says so at this level and at this level. But I still think there's a huge opportunity for clubs to invest in regional areas.
Yeah. Seibs?
Yeah, just that grassroots matter. Because what we want to try and do is create participants, and I don't mean necessarily always playing, but participant in being a supporter or a fan of the game or a club or an area, volunteer or actually someone who is an official or plays the game. So it matters, and I feel like it's the lifeblood of our game. Yeah,
and it's the lifeblood to a lot of communities out there as well. I think you made some great points around aligning with a certain community, having each NRL club. I bring the parents thing up is one of the reasons I say that is I think about, and I've told this story before, like my father's advice to me. He was there at every game since I was 7 years of age. And I can remember it's clear as day. He goes, son, I'm never going to tell you like what to do, talk about your game. just don't ever let me see you tying your laces on the field. That was the only bit of advice. And you know what? He never did. He never saw me do it. And I don't know if it was, it's something I've looked into later around just one idea in your head, one single thing to prepare. I always tape my laces because I know I'd let my dad down. And you know what? And it's something I'm trying to do now with my two that play a little bit of Oz tag, not coach and just let them be. Like my dad, and we were one of the few families that would have to drive. So I'm like 30 minutes in the car there and back. He'd just say, yeah, well done, son. Your boots didn't come undone.
As a coach, Seibs, how many times do you see a player's boots come off in a game?
Yeah, that's
and
it.
And you go, well, how did that happen?
Yeah,
it should not happen.
You know what?
Slip over, mate. That's the other one.
Slip it. But I always, if I see someone tying their laces, I'm in the middle of commentary. I'm like filming. Dad, look. he hates it. It was the one thing that used to annoy me. He's like, I don't understand how professional athletes are tying their laces. Like, get that prepared. So shout out to my old man. Buzz, Matt, Seibs, thanks for joining us on episode 3. Don't forget, same kit next week, gents.
That's it.